Hello and welcome back to another episode of Joe's Knows Fantasy Football. Thank you guys so much for being with us on this Thursday night. That's when this video will be posted. For your crew for this week, it's Giacomo Imperiali, joined here by Dominic Rubafina, Richie Zangara, and Izzy Metal. Pretty successful week, preseason week last week. Went over a lot, basically our draft guides, guys that we really want. But for fantasy for this year, we're going to be coming out with our starts and sits every week. Each guys that we think that whether they're on your roster or not, like you have to be playing this guy, and guys on your roster that we want you guys to avoid. So we're going to hop right into that first with our start and sits. Dom, we're going to throw it to you first. Dom had the running backs for this week. What are your starts and sits for this week?
Yeah, I'm going to kick it off with a surprising one. Javonte Williams against the Seahawks. Seahawks are ranked 23rd in run defense. Broncos also just got rid of Samaje Perine. And Perine was first in routes in yards per route run last year. So I'm projecting Javonte to have 5 catches, 40 yards, and 80 rushing yards and a touchdown this game. I think he'll have a solid game against the Seahawks. And for my sit, I actually have Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon is going against the Colts. I believe that Colts are the 6th best run defense in the league. I also believe that this is going to be a pass heavy game. They're going to be going back and forth. So I think Stroud will be letting it fly.
I think that's pretty solid. I'm a big Javonte guy personally. I think he'll eat a little bit. Rich, I'll throw it on over to you first. You had the wideouts this week.
Yeah, I got into it a little bit last week, but start Cooper Kupp. Obviously great in the slot. He was Matt Stafford's number 1 target when they were both on the field last year. He eats in the red zone, like I said. He's gonna get those touchdowns. He's gonna get those touches a lot. And for my sit this week, I have Brandon Ayuk. Just got paid. He hasn't been in practice. I don't know what limitations he's gonna have. Obviously he's gonna know the playbook, but it's just you never know with these things. Going up against a very good Jets defense, all around. I think that he will be handled very well. So I think Brandon Ayuk is a good fit for this.
I can get behind both of those. Izzy, I'll throw it on over to you here. You have the tight ends this week.
All right, so for my start, I have the Lions' Sam Laporta. I feel like I remember last year. It was really vivid. I played someone last week. It would determine if I made it to the playoffs or not, and Sam dropped a really good game. And yeah, I didn't make playoffs, so which was pretty unfortunate. But I feel like he's just really good fantasy-wise in terms of touchdowns and receives. He's one of those guys. And for my drop, I'm gonna go with Dalton Schultz from the Texans. I feel like CJ Stroud's just gonna have. Well, it depends on CJ Stroud. If he has that sophomore slump that a lot of people are saying that he has, which I'm sort of starting to believe now, or not. And also his receiving core has gotten a lot better from last year. So Schultz might get a little less touches on the ball.
I think that's very very fair with Schultz having that packed wide receiver room. Moving on to myself, though, I had the quarterbacks for this week. 2 guys that I'm a fan of both, but I'm going to start Trevor Lawrence for this week. This one's a pretty simple. We talked about it a little bit in the NFL show. They'll be behind against the Miami Dolphins team. Very explosive offense. Straight up, Trevor Lawrence is going to have to throw the ball. He's going to have to find Brian Thomas and Christian Kirk down the field. Mentioned Evan Ingram should also eat up the middle at the tight end spot. They're just going to be behind in the game. So simply Trevor Lawrence is going to have to throw the ball. And if he wants Jacksonville to come close, he's going to have a good passing game. So I'll start Trevor Lawrence if my life depended on it. I think he's going to have a monster passing game, just chucking deep balls down the field. But my sit's actually going to be a rookie. I'm going to go with Caleb Williams in this one. Going up against a tough Tennessee Titans defense with Jerry Sneed recently required. The Bears playmakers are good. I'm not going to say that they aren't, but rookie quarterback against a tougher, underrated secondary and defense overall in the Tennessee Titans. I am not thrilled about starting Caleb Williams in his first NFL game. I think that may come out a little rough now. I think he'll be A-okay the rest of the season, but especially for week 1 while he tries to figure out Matt Eberflus's new system in Chicago, I'll pass on Caleb Williams for now. And that will do it, though, for our starts and sits for this week. Hopefully, each and every one of them pans out, depending on your group. Moving on, though, here, based off of the early week schedule, You may want to trade some guys before they explode in the early weeks, or get some guys, that you think that could explode later in value that you would just want to get early. So, Dom, a third tier, first tier, who is your very early season trade target?
Yeah, I'm going against you a little bit here. I actually have Caleb Williams.
Wow.
He has a third easiest schedule in the league, and the weapons he has around him. I just think he'll be throwing the ball all day. I think he could possibly even finish as a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year. So I'm very high on him, and get him now while you can.
Rich?
Yeah, I have Amari Cooper as your go-get guy. Going as the wide receiver 31. And we saw last year when Watson and Cooper played together, they were one of the most efficient duos in their 5 games together. Cooper scored 15 points per game 4 of the 5 times. He also led the team with yards and targets. And I just think with a full season of Watson, he's going to finish way higher than the wide receiver 31.
I think that's very solid. I'm a big fan of Amari Cooper personally, especially at ADP and drafts. I agree. I think you should go get him right now. Izzy, I'll throw it to you here for your trade target.
I feel like if you can, and if your adversary is willing, I'm gonna go with Saquon Barkley for someone who you should trade for. I feel like now he's playing with a 10, 15, 20, 30 times better line than he was at the Giants with players like Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. I feel like it's just going to boost his stats so much. He's going to get more touchdowns than he did with the Giants. I feel like he is a bit injury prone, but which I'm hoping on, if he stays fully healthy, I feel like he's going to have a monster season this year.
I think that's fairly reasonable explanation. Obviously, I'm a Saquon on the Giants. For my pick, I'm going to go DK Metcalf. I'm not a fan of Geno Smith, but straight up, he feeds number 1 wide receivers, and DK is the alpha. If you disagree, then you're just wrong. Lockett has a lingering injury, may not play week 1. Even if he does play week 1, wide receivers with lingering injuries never really produce. JSN, I believe, can overtake Lockett to be the 2, but DK is just the guy. He's proven it year in, year out, especially early in the season. The Seattle Seahawks do not have a tough schedule at all this year. Weeks 1 through 3, they play the Broncos, Pats, and Dolphins, and then in week 5, they play the Giants. That just sounds like more points for DK Metcalf for me. Awful secondaries around the board, and even the Dolphins game, they're going to have to throw the ball a lot in that game. I think DK is a guy, especially early in the season before he booms and becomes, I think, a borderline top 10 receiver, which we saw him be a couple of years ago. I think that you want to go get this guy now. I think that DK Metcalf is a guy that I would want on any fantasy team of mine. He has a lot more upside than I think a lot of people are willing to take on this guy. Moving on, though, here, pretty quick and moving along here. Going into our last segment here, obviously with the conclusion of drafts wrapping up, waiver wire guys who go undrafted. We had Puka Nacua last year, guys who picked him up very early in the season, won their leagues because they beat everyone else to the waiver wire. So we want to hear everyone's waiver wire pickup that you want to pick up before week 1 starts and their stock skyrockets. It could be a potential league winner. Dom, I'll throw it to you here first.
Yeah, for my waiver wire guy, I have Ty Chandler on the Minnesota Vikings. I believe Aaron Jones is regressing slowly as he goes on throughout his career. He's getting old. I also believe he is not a very good running back at all. We don't know how this offense is going to turn out. I think with Aaron Jones' injury history, Ty Chandler could easily take over this job, and I think he would do a good job.
Rich?
Yeah, I got Darnell Mooney, actually. He went from Justin Fields to Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins loves the deep ball. I also know he got a pretty good paycheck, so I'd imagine he'd get the ball a lot.
Izzy?
My team just traded for him. I'm gonna go with Jahan Dotson as wide receiver 3 for the Eagles. I feel like he could get a lot more touches than expected this year. And knock on wood, if there is any injury between AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, he's gonna be bumped up to getting more touches on the ball, maybe getting more touchdowns. I feel like it's a really underrated pick, and what we traded for him was really, really cheap. So I'm really liking that pickup, and I'm really thinking that he'll do good this season.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to take a guy that I advocated for actually at the end of last year. I'm going to pick up Khalil Shakir. I mean, he's not on the waiver wire in some leagues, but I'd say in about half the leagues he is on the waiver wire. You have a guy that is really no risk. I mean, he's potentially the wide receiver 1 for Josh Allen. I believe as of right this second, he should be the wide receiver 1. He's the only receiver apart from Kincaid that has had a connection with Josh Allen. Curtis Samuel has consistently not proven he's a valuable fantasy asset. And Keon Coleman's still a raw prospect. I believe that he can be the alpha at some point this season. But for now, I'll take the upside of Shakir. I mean, Josh Allen's still a top 3 quarterback. And if you can have Josh Allen feeding a guy like Shakir who's still on the waiver wire, why not take a chance on the guy if his stock skyrockets? Shakir's still a 24-year-old young receiver. I'd take the upside with him off the waiver wire. But that will do it here for us for a pretty quick episode on Joe's Notes Fantasy. Really just wanted to get out a lot of our info and a couple of our takes heading into week 1 of fantasy. But thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for more NFL and fantasy content. Going to be pumping it out all season long for you guys, trying to get you guys new and fresh content, each of our own analyst opinions. But once again, thank you guys so much for watching Joe's No Sports Shows.